So, oops, what on earth? Oh, there we go. Okay. So, that query ran kind of slow. Yeah? So we would like to know why it ran slow, and the way you do that in Postgres is with explain, right? And, you know, a lot of people are used to this sort of explain syntax, but it's a little opaque, and sometimes a little hard to read because of wrapping. And most importantly, it's not possible, it's very difficult to process this with another program. Like, say, you wanted to write your own sort of query analyzer to analyze the queries in aggregate, or somebody wanted to write a database GUI that was going to show explained plans as diagrams, etc. And so it's a little hard to parse. And so Robert Haas, who's one of the developers, said, you know, it wouldn't be that hard to actually format this in machine-readable format. And you do it with that syntax. And then let's run the same query. Oops. There we go. So this is the XML stuff. So we're getting some wrapping here. Hold on.
Press dash capital S.
Huh?
If you're less, right? So it's dash capital S will stop wrapping.
Oh, yeah?
Minus sign. Yeah. And
Okay.
enter.
There we go. So here you can see, and then actually let's make it bigger again then. So here you can see, so this is an XML format, which is very good for those of you who, how many people here do like Java or other things where you do a lot of XML? So you can now actually process this with your XML parser, and for once things, among other things, look for a script that might say systematically look for certain kinds of slow queries. However, a lot of us find XML annoying and wordy and really hard to read. So for those people, for example, and for most of our folks, we also implemented JSON format. So this gives it to you in JSON format for everybody here who's doing stuff in Python and Erlang and Perl and other things that speak JSON. And this JSON thing actually has the benefit of being a little bit easier to read as a human, although it still has lots of extra doodads if you're just looking at this plan. And for that reason, Greg Lane came along and decided to implement one more format, YAML. How many people know YAML here? And then here we are in the YAML format, which is the most human readable. But the nice thing is that like the others, it's human readable but machine processable because it is regular. And so you can actually write tools to deal with explained plans on the whole. And see a lot of your sort of thing. And actually, I've started using this just to look at queries manually because suddenly this is actually a lot easier to read than the other format where stuff wraps around. So this is sort of a fun thing. It shows, and part of it is the fun thing about this is that this whole patch was, I think, less than 200 lines of code to implement the different formats. Because Postgres is really easy to hack. And that's lots of fun. So, to finish up, real briefly, yeah?
So you can actually export the data with YAML and all those as well, right?
If you wanted to actually dump the database itself, I don't know if it's the database format for YAML. If you actually wanted to dump the database itself to YAML, then you would need some kind of an intermediate library. So to finish up real briefly, and because we had to start late, we don't want to run into the time of the next BOF, so we'll actually sort of take our questions outside. But the one thing I wanted to say is, PostgreSQL needs you if you use Postgres, if you're interested in Postgres, because we've got the final alpha. We got the final alpha coming out soon, and we've got it actually with us on, where did my bag go? What?
Right there, that black thing.
alpha on USB keys because we need people to test it. There are probably more new major features this version than we've ever had before, and new major features mean new bugs. And we need to find and squash all those bugs before we can have a final release of version 9. So I brought copies of the alpha for anyone who's actually available to do testing. I mean, the most basic test is you install it, you compile it, you see that it works, and then you take some application that you have that already runs on Postgres, and you try to run it on version 9. And maybe try out the replication and see if you can break it. Because I'll tell you, in these early days, you will be able to break it. And until we fix all of those things, we can't do a final release. And that's what we really need from people right now. Yes? Okay.
Just make sure you point out this is a source tarball, right? So
Yeah, so this is source tarball, so you'll have to compile Postgres. This is an alpha, which is released in source form. There we go. Okay.
Take one. I'll take
So, there's a PostgreSQL testers mailing list, which I will, hold on, go from here. So this is actually some of how you would actually test it. And there's a PostgreSQL testers mailing list, which is the best place to submit test reports.
So I was gonna ask if there like a wiki or
Can I?
Yeah, there's also a Postgres wiki. And the wiki actually has a big page,
like to run the test.
actually has a big page on testing. There we go.
Do you have one?
Ta-da. Oops, sorry.
Can
Okay, you ready? Oh, whoa. Low ceiling.
Shorter one.
Yeah, okay. And there's a whole page on, oh, actually I didn't put up the link. Wait a minute. There's a whole page on my suggestions on how to test. Here we go. So on the wiki, if you go to the wiki.postgresql.org and you look up testing, it has information on suggestions on how to test the new beta and that sort of thing. Sorry?
It's on my hard drive. I would like to get a copy
You have what?
of 9.0.
Oh, yeah. What, did I give you one of these? No, okay.
I thought you were done when you were
No, that, actually, now I am done. There you go. So, yeah, and please help us test it. We need your help. And other sort of information about Postgres and that sort of thing. And there's a different version of this presentation already online at my website on pgexperts.com. And that's, now we're intruding on somebody else's BOF time. So if you have questions about 9 or about Postgres, I will be happy to answer them immediately outside.
Also, we're going to have a Postgres social down at the West End restaurant down there on the ground floor, so you can hang out there too if anyone doesn't have anything else planned for this evening.